In 1 week, three things happened. The International Energy Agency described the closure of the Strait of Hormuz as, and I am quoting directly, the worst disruption to global energy supplies in history. At the same time, the cost of battery storage crossed a threshold that makes solar power economically viable around the clock, not just when the sun is shining. And the United Kingdom passed legislation mandating solar panels and heat pumps in every new home built from 2028 onwards. Not a target, a legal requirement. Most analysts covered these as three separate stories: an energy crisis, a technology milestone, a housing policy. They are not separate stories. They are one story, and it has direct, concrete implications for your supply chain. My name is Victor, and this is Supply Chain Academy. Let's break this down. To understand why these three events are connected, we need to start with the Strait of Hormuz. The Strait of Hormuz is a 33-kilometer wide waterway between Iran and Oman. It is the single most important choke point in global energy supply. Approximately 20 million barrels of oil pass through it every day. That is roughly 20% of global oil consumption. Add LNG, and you are looking at a corridor that underpins the energy security of Europe, Japan, South Korea, India, and China simultaneously. When the conflict in Iran led to the closure of that strait, the effects were immediate. Oil crossed $100 per barrel. LNG spot prices spiked. Europe's fossil fuel import bill increased by an estimated 6 billion euros from the point the war began. Asia began scrambling for spot LNG cargoes on the open market, competing directly with European buyers for the same limited supply. Taiwan began reconsidering its last operational nuclear plant. Japan fast-tracked reactor restarts that had been stalled for years. These are not small policy adjustments. These are governments making emergency decisions about their energy infrastructure, decisions that will shape industrial policy, construction programs, and supply chains for the next decade. The IEA's assessment was not an exaggeration. This was a structural shock, not a temporary spike. Now here is where the story gets more interesting and more complex. At the exact moment that fossil fuel dependency was being exposed as a strategic vulnerability, the economics of the alternative crossed a critical threshold. Battery storage costs have fallen by approximately 20% per year over the last decade. That is not a linear improvement. It is a compounding one. And the consequence is that we are now seeing the first utility-scale projects that can deliver solar power continuously, 24 hours a day, by pairing large solar arrays with enough battery capacity to store daytime generation for overnight use. The first of these round-the-clock solar projects, delivering 1 gigawatt continuously, broke ground in Abu Dhabi in late 2025. 1 gigawatt continuously from solar and storage alone. That is a power station, and it is the first of many. For governments watching the Hormuz crisis unfold, this was not just a technology story. It was a strategic option becoming available at exactly the right moment. Energy independence is no longer theoretical. It is now an investable, deployable reality, which brings us to the third signal, the one that most supply chain professionals missed entirely. The United Kingdom's decision to mandate solar panels and heat pumps in all new homes built from 2028 is not a housing policy story. It is a demand creation event for an entirely new set of supply chains. Think about what this mandate requires at scale. Every new home in England will need a solar panel array, a battery storage unit, a heat pump, an inverter, and the associated wiring and installation hardware. Multiply that by the number of new homes built annually, approximately 200,000 per year in the UK alone, and you have a structural, legally mandated demand signal that will run for decades. The UK is not acting alone. The European Union's Green Deal contains similar requirements. Germany, France, and the Netherlands have all introduced or are introducing comparable low-carbon building standards. This is a policy wave, not a single national decision. And here is the supply chain implication that almost nobody is talking about yet. The countries building energy independence through solar, batteries, and heat pumps are simultaneously deepening a new supply chain dependency on China. Let me show you why. China currently manufactures approximately 80% of the world's solar panels. It produces the majority of the lithium-ion batteries that go into storage systems and heat pumps. It processes over 85% of the world's rare earth elements, the materials inside the motors, magnets, and sensors that every heat pump and electric vehicle requires, and it dominates the production of inverters, the devices that convert solar DC power into usable AC electricity. Europe and the United States are legislating their way out of fossil fuel dependency, but the supply chains for the technology they are replacing it with are heavily concentrated in a single country, the same country that has already demonstrated its willingness to use supply chain access as a geopolitical tool. China restricted exports of gallium and germanium in 2023. It tightened rare earth processing controls in 2025. This is the paradox at the heart of the energy transition, and it is the kind of second-order consequence that horizon scanning, one of the core skills in supply chain risk management, is designed to surface before it becomes a crisis. The signal was not the UK mandate. The signal was the Hormuz closure and the policy response it made inevitable. The supply chain professional who reads that sequence correctly has a 3 to 5 year lead on the disruption that follows. So what does this mean in practice? 3 supply chain implications are already in motion. First, construction materials supply chains will be restructured around low-carbon mandates. If you operate in construction, building products, or any sector that supplies into residential or commercial development, your customers are about to face legally mandated changes to what they build and how they build it. The demand profile for insulation, glazing, electrical infrastructure, and HVAC systems is shifting. And it is shifting on a legislated timeline, not a market one. That means you can plan for it now. Second, critical mineral demand will surge faster than mining capacity can respond. The IEA projects that demand for lithium will increase by a factor of 40 by 2040 under current energy transition trajectories. Cobalt demand will triple. Copper, the backbone of electrification, faces a structural deficit that no currently planned mine can close. These are not speculative projections. They are the arithmetic of the mandates already on the books. Third, companies sourcing from Asia will face a new layer of geopolitical exposure they have not yet mapped. If your supply chain runs through Chinese manufacturers of solar components, battery cells, inverters, or rare earth-derived materials, you are exposed to the same category of risk that the Hormuz closure created for fossil fuel importers. The question is not whether that exposure exists. The question is whether you have mapped it and what your contingency is. Here is what supply chain professionals can do right now, regardless of their industry. Action 1. Run a horizon scan on your sector's regulatory trajectory. Identify the mandates, targets, and legal requirements that will affect your customers' purchasing decisions over the next 3 to 7 years. The UK solar mandate did not appear overnight. It was signaled in policy documents 18 months before it became law. The supply chain professionals who read those signals are already repositioning. Action 2. Map your critical mineral exposure. Even if you are not in energy or electronics, your supply chain almost certainly contains components that depend on lithium, cobalt, copper, or rare earth elements. Motors, sensors, circuit boards, and magnets are present everywhere. Know where your exposure sits before your supplier tells you there is a problem. Action 3. Stress test your Asian sourcing concentration. If more than 40% of your critical component supply originates from a single country, particularly one with a demonstrated history of using export controls as a geopolitical instrument, that is a single point of failure. It needs a mitigation plan. The window between the signal and the disruption is the most valuable period in supply chain risk management. Right now, that window is open. The frameworks I have walked through in this video, horizon scanning, single point of failure mapping, geopolitical risk matrices, and resilient strategy, are the core curriculum of our course, Geopolitics for Supply Chain Managers, available now on Udemy. The course is 50 minutes of practical, framework-driven content built specifically for supply chain professionals who want to read geopolitical signals before they become operational crises. The link is in the description below. If you found this analysis useful, subscribe to Supply Chain Academy. We publish weekly videos connecting geopolitical events to supply chain decisions, the kind of analysis that does not show up in your procurement software, but absolutely should show up in your strategic planning. And if you have a question, a case study from your own supply chain, or a topic you want us to cover next, leave it in the comments. We will read every one of them. Thank you for watching, and I will see you in the next one.